We have moved to the AFC North. The Browns had an interesting one because we talked about JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, being this day one guy, this kind of Swiss Army knife on defense. And they ended up getting him in round 2. And then they go out and they get Greg Newsom, somebody who really seemed to come on towards the end of the draft cycle. How'd you feel about their draft overall, Tony?
Well, I guess it was kind of exciting, but at the same time, boring for Cleveland Brown fans. I mean, they're used to drafting in the top 10, if not having the first pick of the draft. So, usually the Brown fans are glued to the television, within the first hour of the draft, waiting to see who they were going to select. Now they had to wait around for 3 hours before they made a choice. So I think while it was boring, it was a good kind of boring for the Cleveland Browns. And Brown fans should be excited because, as I said during our luncheon, at the Pro Football Network luncheon, at the draft in Cleveland, the Browns are showing what happens when you bring in the right people, when you bring in the right coach, when you bring in the right general manager, when you bring in the right player development. All of a sudden, you start developing the talent that you had on the team, and you're in the playoffs, and you're competing to make that next stop, that next step. And the draft is a little bit boring because you got to wait for 3 hours before your team makes a selection. So, but I'm sure Brown fans are very happy about that. I think overall they answered needs, with solid players. You mentioned Greg Newsom. I don't know that Greg Newsom made a late charge of draft boards. I think people were turned on or excited when they saw that he ran a 4.3 at his pro day because speed was the biggest issue with Newsom. He was a real good corner at Northwestern the past 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. He's physical, he's instinctive, he makes a lot of big plays. The question was his play speed. He really didn't show great play speed. He ran a 4.38, which tells you that he's got that underlying speed. Just a matter of coaching him to play to that speed. Yeah,
and with Greg Newsom, what do you make of, some of the missed games that he's had throughout his career? Do you think that those little knick-knack injuries are something that really, stay with guys at the next level usually?
Sometimes they do. They often say you're injured in college, you're injured in the NFL, but he's a younger guy, comes out as an underclassman. I don't know that Northwestern has the most developed physical conditioning program in college football, never mind the Big Ten, compared to some of those other schools. So it could be just a matter of him physically maturing and getting into an NFL type of weight training program.
And speaking of injuries, JOK, late breaking injury concern or medical red flags with him, correct?
It was more medical red flags, had to do with an EKG. Plus, it also had to do with the fact that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah played at 210, 212 pounds when he was at Notre Dame. He showed up at his pro day 221 pounds, but he didn't run. So you don't know what his real playing weight is. He's one of those safety-sized linebackers that we often talk about that are in vogue in the NFL these days, except he's more cornerback size than he is safety size at 208, 210 pounds. The fact is this, he's a terrific player. He's a 3-down linebacker. He's an outstanding fit as a traditional weak side linebacker in your 4-3 alignment. He can stack against the run. He can run down ball handlers in pursuit. He's outstanding in coverage. Obviously, he's got to show that his body can stand up to the rigors of the NFL at a smaller weight, or that he can keep weight on and not get injured at 212, playing at 212, 215 pounds.
And then after that, they go with the speedster from Auburn, probably the fastest player in the draft, in Anthony Schwartz.
And a guy who has to learn to play to that speed on a consistent basis on the field. He's track fast, but I don't know that he's football fast. He has had some long runs, long receptions during his college career. A lot of his pass catches were shorter pass catches that he turned into big plays. He's got a great upside. He's got a lot of athleticism. I think 3rd round, with the need that the Browns had at receiver, especially late in the 3rd round, was a terrific choice for him.
And then they go with somebody who was kind of built as a high upside player in James Hudson, the Cincinnati offensive tackle.
Yeah, a guy who fell late because of poor interviews and average workouts. The fact with Hudson is, and I said all along, he's a college left tackle who I project to the right side, but he's got a good upside. He was a real good player in 2020 after transferring to Cincinnati from Michigan. Was also coached very well. Cincinnati coach Luke Farrell is probably one of the best and most underrated college coaches that you're going to find. I'm shocked he hasn't gotten a big-time job yet. But when you look at Hudson, he's got size, he's got strength, he's a nasty blocker, he's got solid footwork. I think he's going to be a real good developmental right tackle. They got Jack Conklin there, who they like a lot. He's got 2 more years on his contract, but someone who can basically be a backup at right tackle, maybe left tackle, and eventually develop into a starter. when Conklin's contract is over, assuming that he's ready to start.
And then, you know, Cleveland Browns fans have to love that they get an Ohio State player in the draft, and they get a good one here with 𝗬𝗢𝗥𝗘𝗦, right?
Yeah, a guy who fills a need. I mean, 𝗬𝗢𝗥𝗘, I thought was a day two prospect. He is athletic. He's fundamentally sound, incredibly quick. Really just 1 year of production at Ohio State, which is why I think he fell out of the second day of the draft. But he's got a good upside. I think he's a guy who, you know, in that system where they use, you got Jordan Elliott, you got Andrew Billings. I think 𝗬𝗢𝗥𝗘𝗦 is someone who will rotate in with those other two players.
And then they stay in that general geographic area and go to Morgantown, West Virginia, with Tony Fields as a linebacker in the 5th round.
Tony Fields from West Virginia by way of Arizona, a guy who, like Owusu-Koramoah, a little bit undersized, but a real good run defender, a guy who gets from point A to point B quickly, a guy who stacks well, really a nasty guy, a nasty linebacker, really attacks opponents, played well at the Senior Bowl. I thought 5th round was perfect. Was a perfect fit for him. They got Marvin Wilson there. They got some other players. I think Fields will contend to be a backup on the active roster.
And then they pair that up with, on the defensive side of the ball again, Richard LeCounte, the safety from Georgia.
LeCounte, who really for the most part was considered day two material until his disastrous pro day when he ran in the 4.7s. And when you're a safety and you run the 4.7s, you're not going top 100, as LeCounte found out. But the fact is this: he's been a good ball player at Georgia for 3 years. Good safety. I mean, year after year. He's got good ball skills. He's got a tall, thin build, challenges against the run, works well with his cornerbacks. I think he's a solid backup free safety that you can use in a zone system. More and more teams are going to situations where they put 3 safeties on the field. And even though LeCounte ran the 4.7s, he actually plays faster than that. So it was a good pick by the Browns.
Do you think that could just be a bit of a Georgia thing? We've seen some of their guys in the past couple of years test a lot more down to earth or poorly than we kind of expected them to.
Could be the field turf they use. Could also be the guys training. They also, from what I remember, they run outside, oftentimes in windy conditions. But the fact is this with LeCounte is he plays much faster than he times.
Yeah, and then they go with Demetric Felton, the running back turned wide receiver from UCLA.
Yeah, and the depth charts I've seen Felton on with the Browns, it's been at running back, which I think is his position because he is a very good ball carrier. He's a guy who's got vision. He has a burst through the hole. He knows how to use his blocks. Went to the Senior Bowl, was used primarily, I should say solely, at receiver, which I thought was a huge mistake because they weren't able to show off his skills as a ball carrier. I think Felton will add depth and absolutely has a real chance to make the active roster for the Browns because he basically brings something different from Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. He's more of a smaller, creative ball carrier who can make defenders miss and can turn the perimeter. So he kind of is a complement to those guys. And then were there any names from their undrafted free agency class that really stand out to you, Tony? Well, obviously the big name is Marvin Wilson of Florida State. We talked about 𝗬𝗢𝗥𝗘𝗦. Marvin Wilson is a guy who really has been tumbling down draft boards the past 2 years. You go back and his best season was 2018, 2019. He never really improved. I thought last year he went in reverse. He's a guy who's got exceptional talent. I mean, he's a big gap penetrator who has the size to hold the point. I think he can compete for a roster spot if he puts his mind to it and he plays hard every down. Otherwise, he's someone who's going to bounce around from team to team. I like Emmanuel Rugamba, the cornerback from Miami of Ohio that they signed. He's a big guy. He's a physical guy, really better facing the action. But again, someone that could compete to be a dime back at the next level. All right, Tony, thank you very much. That was the Browns draft reaction from Tony Pauline.